Hello and welcome to my Action Research virtual poster presentation. My name is Cody Snyder and I'm in section 2. My problem statement. One of my largest struggles is to create a large culminating project that keeps the students engaged and doesn't overwhelm them. Other questions I have to consider. How very large projects keep students motivated? How can they be structured not to seem endless? There's a large amount of theory to cover. I have to keep students engaged. Students get frustrated with completing the actual project, and students start and finish at different times throughout the project. These are all issues I've been having. So essentially my research question is this: how can I create culminating projects that keep students engaged and not overwhelm them? Any definitions relative to my term here? Culminating project. It is a project that has a series of tasks that build upon one another until a final product has been created or achieved. So on to my first article here. What is a culminating activity? I found this really interesting because it encompasses pretty much everything my project here is about. So the focus of a full culminating activity should encompass some integral parts of the course. It can be one or more units or even an entire course depending on how the activity is actually designed. As the project evolves, it should be satisfying to specific expectations laid out in the curriculum documents for that course. The activity should be designed in a way that it is easy to take a step back and see how much of the activity has actually been completed and what stage the student is actually currently at. Organization is a key, and the activity should be well laid out before even being assigned to the students. The next article is how to engage students while learning. Having modern technology and integrating this modern technology and methods keeps the course content current and helps students feel like the content is still relevant. Some of my courses we were learning about technology still used in the 80s and the 70s, and it's not even in cars nowadays. We have electric cars on the roads and they don't even use gasoline. So talking about something that they used way back when, it isn't relevant, and the students are just going to dismiss it really quick because they'll never have to know it. Students tend to be more motivated to work if they see a connection to their personal interests. Find out what interests your students and integrate these into the project as natural motivators. An easy way to do this is add a personal comment or experience throughout the project that students get to link to their personal interests. Having prompt and frequent feedback lets the teacher pace the project and keep the students on track. Constant feedback helps students develop their project in the proper procedure and keeps the focus of the project on point and not sidetracked. Organizing classroom discussions is one of the key components also to engaging students. Having a discussion that is constructive and it actually involves critical thinking actually helps students build on each other's knowledge while allowing the rest of the class, who may not be directly participating, it actually gives them the opportunity to absorb the conversation and learn from it. They may not actually have to contribute to the conversation directly, but this way they actually hear the information, and if a student connects the dots between two things, is really excited, they can actually feel that excitement and passion. The third article, tips for students feeling overwhelmed. I found with my project students would get overwhelmed really quickly. And some things to help them with that is keeping things organized. It eliminates the stress of not knowing where to get the resources, when things are due, and what they're even doing. Right from the beginning of the project, have a timeline of when the components are due when. Give out reminders to the students at intervals that correspond to the workload of each component. If a certain component is worth a quarter of the mark of the entire project, make sure that they know this with due time, like a quarter of that project completion time, so that they don't get a day before it's due and realize that they have 16 hours that they should have been using working on it. Seeking out support falls in the student's responsibilities. As a teacher, make yourself available outside of classroom hours over some method that is acceptable by your facility. An open forum is a great way to have students access information from a teacher wherever they are. It also provides the opportunity for peers to assist those that are in need when the teacher isn't promptly available. Setting dates and times outside of class hours allows students to plan ahead. If they need something between a couple days after the course, or before the class, between the hours of 3 and 6 is something that you might set up. The students shouldn't be waiting till midnight the day before it's due, but as long as you set that 3 to 6, they know exactly the time that they should be ready for, and they can plan ahead. Evaluating what is important is key when dealing with large projects. When laying out the project, make sure key events or tasks are listed in their own chart. This way, if students feel lost in the larger portion of the project, they can just refer back to this important chart in order to focus their time and efforts, rather than stressing on these little small ticks along the way. They'll know exactly which components there are to be completing, what they're looking for, and they can focus their efforts on that so that time isn't wasted. Catching up so all students are at the same point is sometimes essential. Some students work faster than others, and the projects may require the students to arrive at the same step together. Scheduling in a day that allows students to maybe reach a designated point in their project prior to a larger due date will assist students in feeling like there's not enough time to finish their projects. Some students may be finished at that point, but then it brings everyone back to the same starting line all over again. Another article I found was using backward planning or backward design to set project goals. Start from the overall goal that you'd like students to achieve. Have the expectations that you want clearly laid out and finished. Now have a level 4 or other examples of level 3s, 2s, and 1s of the example that you actually want the students to achieve. From there, think of all the other concepts and skills that the students would require from beginning the project to arrive at the finished project. Listing realistic times that it would take for students to perform this task, as well as learning it for the first time, will help give the project a bit of a time frame. Now, setting milestones is a great way to segregate this project into chunks. This will help the project give it structure and help establish timeline for the students to actually plan their time accordingly. Now, having these timelines will actually help keep this project on course and not let people fall behind. If you know that at a certain date they should have this component done, any students that haven't finished at that point, you now know are behind and may not finish the project on time. That's how you set the pace. Lastly, ideas for digital end of semester final projects. Provide time at the beginning of the project for students to choose the projects or topic idea that they would like to pursue. Give them some thinking time. If they arrive at something that they are passionate about, their self-interest will keep them motivated throughout the project. Considering the audience will help direct the project. If it is to be displayed at a large board-wide event for a bunch of schools to see, it would be displayed much differently than if it was just demonstrated to your peers in the classroom. Having choice for the students to deviate from each other helps build individuality between these projects and promotes self-entitlement and pride towards their finished project. Having lots of the same project isn't as interesting as having projects that take different directions of their own and are interesting to learn about once everyone is finished. Prioritizing a key element not only for the teacher but for the students as well. This is not able to include everything from the course in the project. It is good practice for the students to decide what components of the course are important to include in the project and which to leave out. This will help them with future projects and decisions in life. Lastly, tips that will transform your inquiry projects. Setting the rules for the project must include leaves the time for the project rather open-ended for the students and helps them take their own path and creates self-motivated interest in the project. Studies have shown that differentiated instruction and direction gives students a non-traditional type of learning which they respond positively to, letting the students create a unique learning experience which will in turn create a better understanding and retention of the initial course content. Sharing the workload between groups is a great way to make larger projects seem not as heavy on the content components. If at all possible, creating points along the project where the groups work together again, while adding in different information that they've learned may create excitement within the classroom, and additional learning may occur as well as some potential teachable moments. When students self-direct their own projects, it actually takes a deeper understanding of the course content as they are applying it in different topics within their project. Not only do they comprehend the content, but now they are in the stage of applying it to a related term and explaining its similarities. Here is my annotated literature summary. I'm just going to let you guys read it. If you want to pause and play, do it at your own leisure because there is quite a bit of reading here. So essentially we've arrived at my research action plan. How am I going to set these things in? For mine, I have 3 separate points. First is the student survey. A student survey will be included within the culminating projects themselves. See the link below the title of student survey for a sample. This will give you feedback very specific to both the project and how the students feel towards it. There are questions that will answer if the project has been indeed engaging or what the students feel should be changed to make it better, Over time, some of these suggestions can be implemented, and the answers of the survey may actually change positively. 2. Project completion. The data source will be an independent of anyone besides that of the instructor. I will monitor the completion rate of these culminating projects, and as small components get changed and amended, this data will be monitored for any trends. If something in one year has changed from the previous, then the completion increases, and this will mean a positive impact. If it goes the other way, it will be a negative. It just sees if students react positively or negatively to the amendments. And lastly, personal observation. During the lessons and demonstrations that pertain to the project, personal observation of the students and their behavior will be noted. As years pass and the project is assigned, this evidence of how students behave depending on which version of the project that I give, it will actually be noted and the trends will begin to develop. Based on this data, I will be able to assign a project that works for the best for most students. Some bad data sources, for example. Irregular surveying. The key to a good survey is to be unbiased and consistent. If surveys are conducted without structure and irregularity, the conclusions drawn won't reflect the truth. If a survey is only conducted every other year where the project has undergone many amendments, it will be hard to tell which amendment caused the change and if the student responses. The data that is collected from surveying must also be unbiased. If a class is skipped or if half the class is surveyed, the results no longer represent the course or class that aren't representative of the student's opinions. Student grades. Your clientele changes year to year. You can't use that as a specific to see if things are going better or worse. And student enrollment. An attractive project that increases student enrollment may seem like a positive for the project at first glance, but ultimately we are looking for a source that can differentiate student engagement throughout the project. Students can just be enlisting the course for a field trip or an end project, rather than completing the steps within the project. Example, making a drift bike. Students will want the drift bike, but don't really care about making the components of it specific to your project. So, how I will get these things. True 3 data collection sources. The most true to triangulation would be the project completion. This data is a direct result of how much project students have actually finished for the assessment by the due date. Every year, the students will be given the same opportunity as a timeline to complete their project, but the last level of completion will be a true indication of their engagement. The students' surveys will also be taken in word for their surveys, and there will be no altering their opinions and feedback, making it a true reflection. Validity and reliability. As far as these go, the survey will be most true to this term. There will be a Google form, as seen in the previous slides, that will be a requirement for the project completion. It will be assigned to every class, and the questions will serve true to their personal opinion of the project, which they liked and disliked, and what they would have changed for the next class. The project completion will also be recorded every year, and the data will be very concrete and easily comparable year to year to observe trends. The last data source can be biased, my own personal observation, but it is questionably valid. It will take a great deal of discipline, routine, practice to ensure this data is actually gathered properly. So, students in the classroom. What better participants in those that are most involved? My data sources will be focused mainly on how the students feel in regards to culminating projects. They will be conducting their own survey at their leisure, but is a requirement of their project completion. It shouldn't take more than 5 minutes, and students are engaged to give an insightful review to make the projects for those better in the future. Ethical considerations. Students need computers. There's IEPs to always have in the back of your mind, and selective questions to make sure that when we conduct this survey, students don't get offended, and it's very straight to the curriculum and nothing gets in the way of that. My data collection timeline, it's laid out there very obviously. How often student surveys will be collected? Every project. Project completion is every single project through the course. Personal observation, I'll be doing that every time. How I will use this, ultimately the data retrieved from my 3 sources will be entered in a spreadsheet. It's a great tool to manipulate graphs as well. It gives a great visualization. Course averages, amendment results, these are all things that I can pull from the data and go from there. So my personal summary. Now I understand the importance of collecting data really is. Anyone can say that their methods work, but how does this one truly know? I've had lots of teachers who think that they're the best teacher in the school, when in fact most students loathe their class and their practices. If they would send out surveys, look at similar posts I've touched on in this presentation, you might find that they need to change things up a little bit. Projects make me feel more striving towards student engagement and makes me want to throw a plan. Thank you for listening.